Okay, Invincible Season 3 has finally come out, and I've just watched the first 3 episodes. How do I feel? Pretty darn good about it, actually. It's very clear that this season is going to set a new precedent, and I'm going to get into some very heavy spoilers here, at least for the first 3 episodes, which is all that I've done, or that's all that's out at the time of recording. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Invincible is a great show on Amazon Prime about a boy named Mark Grayson who inherited his powers from his father, who is also known as Omni-Man. Unfortunately, Omni-Man kind of went a bit in the first season. Well, okay, I wouldn't say he went crazy, but it was revealed that Omni-Man is essentially I think it was always known that he was an alien, but apparently the race that he is from is a race of conquerors, and essentially Earth is on their hit list. And in Season 2, Season 1 ended with Mark and Omni-Man fighting, with Omni-Man leaving Earth. And in Season 2, Mark finds Omni-Man in space to find that Omni-Man has a new son who's growing exceptionally rather accelerated. And apparently Omni-Man is sort of at the point where he's kind of regretting how he treated people. And that still is kind of like this weird kind of arc that's kind of carrying through with his character. Maybe he's going to have a redemption arc, maybe he won't. Feels like he's going to have one. So basically, in Season 2, Mark essentially killed somebody, and like a villain that was after him, and this brought him to kind of a dark place. And this is kind of something that I think is interesting, that the show kind of addresses this, that sometimes good guys, even superheroes, do kill people in the line of duty. And that's kind of, it's an aspect of this show that I think a lot of superhero stories generally avoid. But the one thing I've always admired about Invincible is that you do see a lot of people die, like in supposedly Friendly Fire, or even the second episode of this show featured an alien invasion with people getting killed left and right. And I went, that would happen. And I feel like that's just something that a lot of superhero things just sort of gloss over and just don't put in there. But dude, that would so happen, and you know it. So, Season 3 starts out with an interesting episode with Dr. Seismic. Now, yeah, this is a villain that's appeared on the show several different times and appears to have a lack of a personality or motivation. I actually think that's done on purpose. And what happens is Dr. Seismic has a plan that actually involves imprisoning the world's greatest heroes. And I think Cecil says it best when he just goes like, how did nobody like Dr. Seismic do all this stuff? So eventually Cecil, now if you're not familiar with Cecil Stateman is one of the more interesting characters on Invincible. He's in charge of the Global Defense Agency, or GDA, and he's that guy who essentially is sort of in charge of the protection of Earth, but knows that in order to protect Earth, you gotta do some pretty scummy things every once in a while. So one of the things that he's lately been doing is he's been taking a lot of villains, or people that Mark has essentially brought to justice, and what Mark didn't know is that these villains are sort of working for Cecil now. However, Cecil did not really mention that and stuff like that, so things got a little hackneyed. The second episode of Season 3, I think, is one of the better episodes of this series overall, where Mark and Cecil actually come to blows. Now, Mark doesn't really hit, but actually he kind of does, since Cecil has like an army of pretty much anything over his control. In fact, I think he has some sort of weird teleportation power that I'm not certain whether is part of his powers or he has them artificially. I always keep forgetting this. Episode 2 of Season 3 also features kind of a Cecil origin story, which, in case you... And the problem is it kind of demystified him. One of the things I always liked about Cecil is he always had this kind of strange scar across his cheek, And I always wondered how he got that. Well, we actually find out how he did get that. And I'll let you watch it if you're really that interested. For some reason, Cecil Stetton's cheek has always really been fascinating to me. And yeah, you can quote me on that, but don't misquote me. Now, so here's the thing. Once Mark figures out that Cecil has been essentially lying to him, this is when Mark kind of does things that I am going to be very honest with you. I don't really agree with them. I actually think Mark is a bit in the wrong on this, but I actually don't think Cecil is fully 100% right on this. And maybe I think that's what's making this show of Invincible rather interesting, because it's not like we have the heroes that are 100% good and villains that are 100% bad. I feel like there is kind of a gray area here that these characters are kind of tromping into. And I have to admit, I can't really defend Mark's actions because in the battle I was talking about with Dr. Seismic, the heroes are freed by these guys called Reanimen. And when Mark sees that the Reanimen has come and saved them, after he gets saved, he immediately punches it. And it feels kind of reactionary to me, because I was going like, at the time, I think the battle had pretty much been won. All the other heroes had been freed. Some heroes I didn't even recognize. And so when he goes to Cecil and saying like, hey, what's up? You have the Reanimen, you have this guy called Darkwing, who I've helped put away because he murdered people, and now he's just on our side. And then when you see in the flashback of Cecil actually felt almost exactly the same way as Mark. In fact, even did something even more reactionary, where he sees two villains that he once put away had been kind of reformed, and Cecil just shoots them point blank, and then goes to prison for a little while, and then ends up reforming the villain prison, but in a way that feels kind of Machiavellian. Something is up with this. So it's kind of interesting to see Mark confront Cecil on this. And the thing is, Cecil apparently has put some sort of a chip in his head that will emit a sonic signal, which will disable Invincible. And I kind of went like, okay, I'm starting to see Cecil as kind of a bad guy here. But the thing is, Mark would not let up. I kept waiting for him to stand down and try and de-escalate the situation, and it just never happened. Every time that Cecil sent Reanimen, Mark just didn't go like, okay, I'm not going to fight you. No, he would beat them all up, and then he would talk. And he did this in front of the Global Guardians. And if you're not familiar with the Global Guardians, they're kind of like the team's, kind of Invincible's version of the Justice League or Avengers in this world. And essentially, the Global Guardians were all killed by, or Guardians of the Globe, I forget what their name. But anyway, they were all killed by Omni-Man in the first season, and they've kind of had to do reboots of them several times. So when Invincible comes in and says, hey, this is what Cecil has been doing, this caused a split in the Guardians of the Globe. And they just sort of like, and I actually kind of thought, okay, this is really getting interesting. Because now we're getting to the point where these guys just don't have any control anymore. That now characters like Rexplode, Shrinking Ray, and possibly even Adam Eve, which I'm not really going to talk about here, are getting involved with this stuff and realizing that, hey, we can't really follow the establishment, which I kind of like that this show is going there. I think I talked about how Omni-Man has another son who has been adopted into Mark's family and is called Oliver. And Oliver kind of kills some people, which is weird. It didn't feel that should have happened. I basically kind of went like, yeah, I really didn't like that. And here's the thing, he just kind of like does this and doesn't really think about it. It just sort of happens. He shows no remorse. Something tells me we're going to see a bit more of him. Okay, I'm going to end this review or this rant a little early, but let me tell you that Invincible Season 3 has been pretty awesome. It's Mark from the Geek Church, signing off.